Warning, this content may be disturbing to some audiences. Subscribe, if you dare.
He went on to be drafted by the Patriots. He won 2 Super Bowls with them. Hey everybody, welcome to ANECDOSED. People ask Reddit. Teachers of Reddit who have had students become millionaires, what were they like in your classroom?
Number 1.
I don't know if this counts, but recently the father of one of my students won $1 million off a scratch ticket. This was a family living paycheck to paycheck, and often spent their summers living at campsites because it's cheaper than rent. Oftentimes his only real meal was the free lunch he got at the cafeteria. His dad is using the money to buy a house, and since they won, my student has been way more focused. He's turning in his work and just seems so much happier.
Number 2.
I am an economics teacher in high school and I've had 2 of which I know. One was always a computer data type of boy. Nerdy on one hand, but he had quite a big mouth on him. Became some data expert at an investment bank. The other boy was more of the entrepreneurial, no idea if that is an English word type. He started a recruiting business for high-tech companies which became pretty large. That boy is annoying as FCK to deal with as a teacher. Way too smart for his class, therefore bored, therefore an absolute little monster. Not unfriendly though.
Number 3.
I taught a future NFL player. He was built like a brick shithouse, was extraordinarily polite, kind, and thoughtful. He'd sit with the lonely kid at lunch. He was never late, in fact, he was always early. Straight A's. He was determined to be the best. Good looking, well spoken, every parent's dream. If anything, he was very cocky, but he could be because he was the best at everything he did. It literally annoyed me that he was so perfect. He went on to be drafted by the Patriots. He won 2 Super Bowls with them. He's still built like a brick shit house. He married a gorgeous woman, has a beautiful family, made boatloads of cash, retired from the NFL, and now runs charities. He's one of the kindest, sharpest guys I've ever met. Still annoys me.
Number 4.
I don't teach anymore, but I had a student in one of my classes, a very easy intro astronomy lab, who went on to play in the NFL. Nobody is super famous but a millionaire, at least based on what's in his contract. Who knows if he actually maintains millionaire status. In class, he was extremely quiet and never paid attention and missed several labs. He didn't ask to make them up until the very last week, and per the syllabus policy I had to say no and he'd get the C he earned. The coaching staff went over my head to the lab director and I had to spend a day letting him redo the labs, and he got his unfairly given A. It was bullshit and played a huge role in me deciding to go a more pure research route rather than the far more common role that includes teaching.
Number 5.
The kid was in high school. He slept from 7 a.m. when the class started up until 11:55, then he had his lunch alone in the corner and continued sleeping until 16:30 when class was over. He had no friends, no nothing. Not a single person including his parents knew how he still got above 90% in all subjects. His parents claimed that he also spent his time sleeping at home. I asked him once and this was what he said almost exactly. I have no goals, no passion, nothing excites me, I know so little and yet I don't want to know more, I can get what I need when I need them. Life is simply a game and if you don't skip the tutorials it's easy. He is truly living on autopilot. Even zombie-like. His face was so expressionless but it's not painful, more like he's at peace with himself. Like he understands life itself. Nevertheless, I managed to give him goals by the end of second year. And boy oh boy did that guy learn fast. He finished 4 years worth of college books and study guide in 5 subjects within 6 months with all the practice and exam samples. Then he built companies from the ground up. I met him again a couple of years ago. He said he isn't working anymore. He sleeps all day and does nothing literally. He thanked me for the goals and left. The goal was to make enough money for him to do nothing for the rest of his life and he got it. He was 30. I may have stumbled upon a genius. A genius who thinks that life isn't worth the hassle.
Number 6.
I had Lance Lynn. I also had Greg Oden when I was student teaching. I didn't have Gordon Hayward in any of my classes, but I was friendly with him as he was in my coworker's class and we would chat often. Lance was not pleasant. He was often absent and he knew he was going to pitch in MLB. He didn't turn much in. I think he dropped my class after the first semester. I had Greg when he was a freshman. He was quiet, studious, and respectful. Gordon was high achieving and a model student. He was outgoing and easy to be around. He was also an amazing tennis player.
Number 7.
My mother is a high school English teacher, and she was telling me about a past student of hers the other day. His name was Ryan, and he was always on his phone. Everyone is on their phone a lot, but this kid was to the point where it was normal to kick him out of the class for not paying attention. Well, in 2017 he dropped out when Bitcoin hit its peak and now has $3 billion. Allegedly he had been in the Bitcoin game since 2012. He is now living comfortably in the Cayman Islands.
Number 8.
Not sure his net worth, but I had a student this year that is a sort of internet rapper. Everyone constantly talked about how rich he was, and he would wear shoes that were like $1,000 plus every day. Look them up and I assume they're real. He did not care at all about school. He was too busy thinking about the next interview and his next trip to LA and all this stuff to really have time for that. So in a sense I understood why he didn't care too much for it, which sucks because he was actually a bright kid when he tried. He just left the school last week stating that he just couldn't handle school plus all his work, so he's being homeschooled instead.
Number 9.
My graduating class in a normally middle-class neighborhood produced a bunch of rich people and famous people. One is currently on SNL. He was always the center of attention, doing all the assembly announcements, being class clown, etc. Very smart too. He was nice, but definitely a cool kid. He was besties with one of the founders of a major streaming service I bet you all have on your phone. He was extremely smart and also a clown, but more reserved. I was a late partner with an actress who has been on TV periodically. She was into martial arts and pretty down to earth. One of my friends I'm still close with started an internet deals site that he sold for millions. He was always reserved, hard worker, down to earth. He definitely enjoys the rich life, but again, who wouldn't?
Number 10.
2 years ago, I taught a millionaire in my classroom. Kid had made it big doing something in the YouTube scene with Minecraft, and leveraging that he got into streaming and esports in a big way. Crashed his first Tesla in our parking lot at 16, had another one 3 months later. The kid was surprisingly chill. Fame and money taught him extraordinarily quickly who his real friends were. I can't tell you how infinitely effing annoying it is to have to deal with students who think they're going to be the next big streamer, when I actually had one in my classroom. They always cite that kid, and I have to remind them, yeah, but that guy busted his ass making videos since 6th grade, was up at the crack of dawn editing, and streamed late into the night, and didn't spend all his time vaping in the backseat of a car in the school parking lot thinking nobody notices them. Had to have an interesting conversation with the students' parents when graduation came around. He was a decent student, not amazing, but his ability outpaced his motivation, not atypical for a teenager. Parents were Indian immigrants, students has to go to college. Thing was, Netflix and Microsoft already had letters in his mail starting in 6 figures for his coding ability. Was a hard sell to parents to help them realize he could go to school just about whenever he wanted with the amount he had in the bank, but these paychecks weren't always going to be there. He had a marketable skill right now. He had no interest in college at the moment, and despite spending stupidly on some things, cars, usually, I know at graduation he had a solid 4.5 million in savings, as he'd taken a ravenous interest in economics, and investing now that he had money, and one of his biggest brags was when he could show his econ teacher every time he cashed in a big investment. He'd be funny about it too, finally pay off my parents' mortgage, that should get them off my ass. For a week or two.
Number 11.
Recently learned that a former student started her own tech startup in the SF area. No idea if the startup is taking off yet, or if she is a millionaire, but she was a tremendous student, super pleasant to teach, and I am proud to say she was my student.
Number 12.
Had an 8th grade student in 2006 who was a total tool. He was very entitled. Parents sued the district over minor disciplinary action. Like he was given 1 week's lunch detention for lighting off a pack of Black Cat fireworks in the lunchroom. It caused a panic as the kids thought a shooter was present. They sued for emotional and social development damages. They dropped the lawsuit and their kid did have to serve that 1 week detention. After that though we were quietly told to not write him up ourselves and instead call in the disciplinary principal. So it wasn't long before this kid realized he was untouchable. He would lick his hand and wipe spit on other kids. He stole kids' stuff, even though he literally had anything he could ever want. He would hide stink bombs in other kids' backpacks, this one is unconfirmed. So a total tool. I heard around 2012 that his parents died on vacation, and as an only child he was the main one who inherited their estate. His aunts and uncles sued him and managed to claw some cash out of him, but he was still sitting on a stack of cash that most would only dream of. I know he started partying like crazy, and was arrested several times. Lawyers got him out of it every time. Driving drunk is mostly what I heard. Eventually he wrapped his Audi R8 around a tree or electric pole. I hated that kid. No lost love when he died. Still sucks and is pretty tragic given that in a twisted way it wasn't all his fault.
Number 13.
Taught a future NFL player who was a total jerk. Have had plenty of student athletes and almost all have been perfectly good students. This guy probably knew that he was going to go pro and so he didn't give a shit. Once, instead of turning in a research paper, he handed me a piece of paper he'd ripped out of his notebook with 3-sentence fragments written on it, not even trying. Another time, he obviously plagiarized an assignment. I want to say that he turned in a printed copy of the document he plagiarized along with his paper, which was just stuff he'd copied and pasted from the source. During other students' final presentations, he showed up late, then literally sprawled across 2 rows of desks, his body on his own desk, his arms outstretched ahead of him across the empty desk in the row in front of him, making a big spectacle sleeping through it all. I was a TA at the time and the professor knew all about this nonsense. So, anyway, he did no meaningful work, and was a total a-hole, and failed. 2 years later, it's time for him to graduate and he realizes that his F in this class is going to prevent it unless he retakes the class. Rather than taking responsibility for his actions and retaking the class, he filed a complaint against me, saying that I discriminated against athletes. Thankfully, I still had the receipts from all his nonsense, the scrap of paper, the emails about his plagiarism, etc. I forwarded them to the athletic program's academic advisor and that was the end of it. A few years later, I saw him playing in the Super Bowl. Everyone I was around thought it was so neat that I knew someone on the team, but all I could think was what a D-bag he was.
Number 14.
Always did his assignments, and really strived to learn. He would come up to me with writing projects, and ask me my thoughts on the Russian writers he was reading. I gave him help on his first Amazon Kindle publishing project, which I don't believe made a dime. A couple of years later, he had a best-selling collection of short stories, and had signed an advance on a novel. Make sure to share your personal story in the comments below and have the opportunity to be featured in a future video. Also, if you like these topics, don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit the notification button to continue seeing more content like this every day. See you next time.